Hello and welcome to the Game Day podcast from talkSPORT with me, Sam Matterface, talkSPORT's Alex Crook and Kevin Hatchard, our European football correspondent. As Arsenal go 8 points clear at the top of the Premier League table, Chelsea steal in and grab yet another player from under yet another club's noses. And what's the problem at City? Why are Manchester United so good under Erik Ten Hag? It's all on the Game Day podcast, talkSPORT.
They're 8 points clear. We're halfway through the season. Manchester City are not playing well. I think it's going to be a massive missed opportunity if Arsenal don't go on and be crowned champions.
I think Conte deserves criticism for his team selection.
This could be one of the best seasons in living memory for Newcastle United.
Ten Hag has got these players playing for the badge. He's got the players playing for him. He's cultivated a wonderful team spirit in the dressing room. They look the real deal. He looks the real deal. So at the moment, I've got nothing to complain about. It's unusual.
Chelsea are back to winning ways. It finishes Chelsea 1, Crystal Palace 0.
Well, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't relieved, because it's nice to get a win.
Chelsea beat Palace on Sunday afternoon, but the performance hanging on towards the end against Crystal Palace just to make sure that they got 3 points, because that seemed to have been something that had eluded them for a very long time. It was quite a painful experience. But don't worry, because coming to the rescue is £88 million Mykhailo Mudryk. As European football expert Kevin Hatchard, what do you make of the acquisition? We'll talk about the shenanigans, which is basically Chelsea waiting for all these great players to be linked with other clubs and then swooping in and nicking them by paying them more money and paying a bigger transfer fee right at the very end. And the efficacy of that. But what about the player himself? How good is he?
He's good. We don't know how good he is just yet because he's not had a huge amount of football. And it was actually a Premier League manager that gave him the chance to shine when Roberto De Zerbi was at Shakhtar. He decided that he wanted to put him front and centre. He wanted him to be a major part of his team. And he took that chance and he ran with it. And he was excellent in the Champions League earlier this season. I mean, when you think of what's happened to Shakhtar, obviously the war in Ukraine, as a result of that, FIFA decided that players could unilaterally suspend their contracts and leave Shakhtar. So suddenly Mudryk, having been brought into the team previously by De Zerbi, was the main man, really. He was excellent in some of those group games in the Champions League. They shouldn't have been anywhere near qualifying for the last 16, but they made a real fist of it. He's somebody who plays primarily down the left, but he can play a bit in central areas. He likes to come in. He's kind of a reverse Robin, if you like. He likes to come in on his right and do some damage. He's got great acceleration. He's definitely a very exciting player. Chelsea have probably played over the odds, but Shakhtar were driving a hard bargain.
Well, Chelsea have had a problem in midfield, haven't they, Crook? So it seems like the policy is just not to play one and just have a couple of defenders at the back, and then Ziyech, Mudryk, who else have we got there? Aubameyang, João Felix, Sterling, Fofana, Havertz, Mount. Just play all-out attack. It seems a very odd strategy, doesn't it, to bring in another big-name player, young player, for this amount of money. And Chelsea have spent a lot of money on young, up-and-coming potential rather than real proven talent during this transfer window. Well, listen, I hope it works, because if it doesn't, they've wasted another batch of cash.
Yeah, and obviously the reason for the long-term contract is because it helps negate FFP, because basically the transfer fee gets broken down per annum, per year of the contract. But it's a big risk, isn't it? If Mudryk comes in and flops, suddenly you've got a player who's tied to at least a 7.5 year, possibly an 8.5 year contract with a year's option. So I don't really understand the approach. We hear that maybe Raheem Sterling could be allowed to leave as a result of this signing. He's only been there a few months. What does that tell you about Todd Bowley's tactics in the transfer market in the summer? I don't believe that Mudryk was particularly high on their list of targets. Even up until a week ago, it just became a deal that they obviously thought they could get done. Arsenal, in many ways, had done their homework for them. So, yeah, it's a strange approach, particularly when there's other positions that they're crying out for investment. Central midfield, as you mentioned, for a long time is an issue. And still, they need an out-and-out number 9 for me. That's why they're struggling to see off teams like Crystal Palace at home.
Yeah, they need a new goalkeeper. They need a replacement right back. They need a replacement left back. They need 2 centre midfielders, and they need a striker. But hey, just keep collecting those number 10s. It's like he's got a Panini sticker and he only wants the shinies.
Yeah, the thing about Chelsea's transfer policy, by the way, just quickly, I'm on board with bringing in young players. That's fine. The bit I don't get is the summer. Why would you bring in Koulibaly and Sterling, guys who are established for, fair chunk of money, and then go and get all of these young players on top of that? So it's clearly something they've pivoted already in that first season. So, it's quite a strange approach.
Yeah, it's a good point, and it just sort of highlights the problems that Chelsea are having. They've had problems on the field as well, but they beat Crystal Palace by 1-0 on Sunday, stopping a run of 3 defeats in a row with a big, big win. 2 wins in 9 now for Graham Potter, and Liverpool to come. Crystal Palace, not sure about them. They've been up and down over the course of the season. They don't score enough goals. After that game had finished, all attention turned to the North London derby.
Full-time, Tottenham 0, Arsenal 2, North London derby delight for the Gunners. 8 points clear at the top of the Premier League.
It's great. I'm going in the dressing room and just feeling the joy and the togetherness around the team and how much it meant for them. It's special.
Arsenal is a really strong team, and also tonight showed that they deserve to stay at the top of the league.
Spurs were dreadful in the first half, as you would expect, because they always are. It's the 14th time in competitive football that they have been behind at half-time and this season, and they were again.
It's baffling, and it has to come down to the coaching because it's happening week in, week out. So he is setting the Spurs players out to defend in the first half and then removes the shackles once they go behind in the second. Now, you can get away with that against teams like Bournemouth, with the greatest respect in the world. You can't get away with that against this Arsenal team, a team oozing confidence, a team running away at the moment with the Premier League title, and their fans are still reluctant to say they're favourites. They have to be favourites now. They're 8 points clear. We're halfway through the season. Manchester City are not playing well. I think it's going to be a massive missed opportunity if Arsenal don't go on and be crowned champions. But Tottenham have got so many problems. The squad isn't good enough. The goalkeeper isn't good enough. The 2 fullbacks aren't good enough. And at the moment, and this is controversial, the manager isn't good enough because he's not getting the best out of that group of players.
Okay, let's take those 2 things in isolation. So let's start with Spurs and just deconstruct their team first of all, because you've battered them and then you've piled the pressure on Arsenal. You can't say anything nice and just say they're playing well. Well done to them. This is an unexpected opportunity for them. Go on, do it, lads. Pat on the back. Well done, Mikel. We're impressed with you. You have to pile the pressure on. We'll come back to that in just a second. But Kev, let's talk about the Tottenham team. This is a Tottenham team that has had a little bit of investment under Antonio Conte, investment that he's called for. He's got some of the players back that were out injured earlier in the season and were out of form as well. They missed Bentancur. I think that's a massive miss for them in midfield. But the goalkeeper, who I'm honestly was so surprised didn't make a rick at the World Cup, just continues to make error after error for Tottenham Hotspur in big, big games. And actually, that's a big, big issue for them because he's supposed to be the captain, the leader, the man between the sticks. They need a change there.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's a big problem. And him making mistakes in big games has been a running theme for years. That's not a new thing. That's not suddenly, Lloris has got to 36 and he's starting to creak. But I think it's getting to the stage now where there are so many errors in games that it's very difficult for him to have that kind of authority that he needs to be the leader of that group. And so Tottenham need to be looking at a replacement. I don't think it's a case of bringing somebody in and then hoping he'll compete. I think it does need to be probably a clean break. He's been an amazing servant for France. He's now retired with international duty. He's been an amazing servant for Tottenham. But if they want to move forward as a football club, they're going to have to find a new number one. I think that's clear. I think the fullback positions are a problem, but I think Conte deserves criticism for his team selection. Pape Sarr, there's clearly talent there, there's clearly potential there, but he was all over the place and Arsenal just overran him in midfield. So that was the wrong selection. Ryan Sessegnon, I imagine it was about having the pace to deal with Saka. Saka had him on toast for the whole first half. So that was the wrong selection as well on the left-hand side. So I think this one's on Conte, really. And I thought Arsenal, it was the first time this season that I've genuinely thought they are maybe ahead of Manchester City in this race psychologically, because I've always wondered how would they deal with these big games. Well, they've been to Chelsea and won, and they've been to Manchester United, not deserved to lose, but they did. And now they've been to Tottenham and played them off the park. So psychologically, they're absolutely there.
Okay, talking of psychology, let's go to Arsenal and Crook trying to sort of settle them by suggesting, not that they listen to a word he says, by suggesting that it's theirs to lose now. This is a brilliant, brilliant team that has been constructed very quickly by a young manager who's actually an advert for patience, isn't he? He's an advert for patience. Give him time, give him the authority to cleanse the dressing room, and he's built you a team that can compete for the title. That's a magnificent achievement for Arsenal in such a short space of time.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And I think one of the most salient points you made there is how likeable they are as a group of players, how fearless they are. And I guess when you've got a team of young players, it goes one way or another. They either get overawed by the occasion, they get overawed by the pressure of being the league leaders, or they embrace it and they build on that. And Arsenal are certainly doing that. I think they've been fortunate with injuries, barring Gabriel Jesus, all their key players have stayed fit to this point. Obviously, Eddie Nketiah has come in and probably surprised a few people. He surprised me. I was worried for Arsenal when Jesus got injured, but Nketiah has actually stepped up and really taken his game to a level that I didn't necessarily think was there. Partey and Xhaka bring that experience in midfield. There's a lot to like about Arsenal, and obviously they've got a big game at home to Manchester United next weekend. Kev's absolutely right. Even with my United spectacles on, they didn't deserve to lose at Old Trafford, so that's going to be a real test of exactly how far United have come under Erik Ten Hag. But I just think they've got to embrace the pressure head on now, because arguably, despite you accusing me of psychological games, there's more pressure on Manchester City still than there is on Arsenal. I think we've seen that, with Pep Guardiola's rather salty post-match interview with you on Saturday. I don't care about the Premier League. Well, you do, Pep. And actually, it's more important for Manchester City to win the title this season than it is for Arsenal. But I don't think Arsenal will get a better opportunity. Liverpool are floundering. They're not title contenders. Chelsea haven't at all kicked on this season. Tottenham are not in a good place. Manchester United obviously have a lot of ground to make up because of how they started the season. And this is not City at their very best. It's there for Arsenal. I really believe that.
Hold on 1 second, Kevin Hatchard. There is one team that Alex Crook did not mention during that long list of title contenders.
Newcastle 1, Fulham 0, 89 minutes on the clock, and it's Isak with a finish.
Their top four race is certainly intact, and Alexander Isak popping up with the winner. I actually thought he played particularly well when he came off the bench, because he dropped deep in behind Callum Wilson before going up front on his own, and he caused real problems for that Fulham back line. They've got a decent squad, they're incredibly well coached, and they don't concede any goals. They keep on winning.
Yeah, that's the key, Sam, the defensive side of it. It's extraordinary. It's only 11 goals conceded so far. Excellent goalkeeper, a defence that works together very, very well, and a cohesive unit that defends from the front as well. And I think Isak's a good point. I thought he looked as if he was raring to go. He's a very intelligent player. He can drop into that kind of 10 role. He can roam and do damage, and he'll have been thrilled to have got that goal after, all that injury frustration. So the momentum is there, and I think sometimes when you come through those tight games, they've come through a few of those now, it just builds that belief that you will be able to find a way through. And look at what they've done on the road. They've gone to Arsenal and drawn 0-0. They've gone to Manchester United and drawn 0-0. They pushed Liverpool ever so close and were really unlucky to lose that game at Anfield to a last gasp winner. So, look, this is a proper team, and it is a triumph of coaching. Eddie Howe deserves enormous credit for what he's done.
I remember going back to the early stage of the season and having an argument with Crook about Newcastle, because he was moaning that they hadn't had to put too many points on the board. They won their first game and then drew, I think, their next 6. And I said it wasn't fair because they deserved more points than that and that they would end up being okay. Boy, have they turned it around since then, Crookie. I think they've only lost one game all season in the Premier League. They're unbeaten at home. They've got a 2-legged semi-final in the Carabao Cup against Southampton as well. This could be one of the best seasons in living memory for Newcastle United.
14 games unbeaten for only the second time in the Premier League era, so a club record in their sights. Defensively, they are sensational, which is a step away from what Eddie Howe did at Bournemouth when they were always attractive to watch. They would always score goals, but they couldn't keep a clean sheet for love nor money. Listen, this is not a Newcastle side in the ilk of Kevin Keegan's entertainers. It's a side built on defensive stability. The goalkeeper has done very well. Schär and Botman, one of the best centre-half partnerships in the league. Trippier actually had a bit of an off day on Sunday. Obviously gave away the penalty. His delivery from set pieces wasn't quite on point, but he's been a fabulous signing as well. I think they'll be in the top 4. I still don't think they're scoring enough goals to be a serious force in the title race.
Fulham are having a stellar season as well, aren't they? They were unlucky against Newcastle. They beat Chelsea on Thursday night. I was there. They were terrific all over the pitch. They worked incredibly hard. They created opportunities, and they did that. They beat Chelsea without Alexander Mitrovic and Carlos Vinicius playing instead. Yeah, they had a helping hand from Chelsea's incredibly bad defending and terrible goalkeeping, but they did very well in that game, and I thought they were deserved winners. So they're having a good season under Marco Silva. I spoke to after the game, and he was pretty positive about his group of players. He was, I think he was pretty proud of what Fulham have achieved so far. I hope they go on and continue that for the rest of the season. They're certainly going to have another season in the Premier League. That is for sure. Let's turn our attention to the big Manchester derby on Saturday. I was there commentating for talkSPORT. It was a brilliant comeback from Manchester United. But Manchester City, what's going on there then?
Rashford pokes it home, and Manchester United have turned it around. The new order has been defeated, and the old guard are back in charge.
I think that this team is progressing a lot in those facts, dealing with setbacks, dealing with suffering and painful moments, and keep going after setbacks like a goal against.
After conceding a goal, the next 3 minutes we cannot concede the next one, and we were there to score. Calm. And this is the most important detail we have to improve. Yes or yes for the future.
But what impresses me about this Manchester United team, and you compare it to Tottenham, I've already criticised their approach. Manchester City, player for player, are still better than Manchester United. I think we can all agree on that. But United took the game to them in the first half. They played on the front foot. They had a game plan to get runners in behind the Manchester City backline. Probably should have been in front at the break. They were a bit wasteful with the chances that came their way. Tactical masterclass from Ten Hag to do what Danny Murphy has been advocating for in these type of games and play Fred alongside Casemiro. They did a real stifling job in midfield. Marcus Rashford looked like he would be out for weeks at half-time, somehow comes out for the second half and pops up with the winner and obviously a key contribution for the first goal. Ten Hag has got these players playing for the badge. He's got the players playing for him. He's cultivated a wonderful team spirit in the dressing room. They look the real deal. He looks the real deal. So at the moment, I've got nothing to complain about. It's unusual.
Yeah, it is unusual. By the way, if you're sitting here expecting us to dissect that Marcus Rashford goal and tell you why it should have been allowed or why it shouldn't have stood, then you're going to be disappointed, because I'm sure you've heard every single angle of debate between Saturday lunchtime and whenever you've downloaded this podcast. And the truth is the goal was given, and Manchester City should have reacted better because they had that second half in the palm of their hands. They were on top in that game. They should have gone on and scored more goals. They should have put that game to bed. They didn't do it, and they got punished as a result. Kevin, talk to me about Erik Ten Hag, because afterwards I spoke to him and he said to me, we discussed the Marcus Rashford situation. I said, look, there was a point where I thought he couldn't run anymore. There was a point where I thought you'd have to bring him off, but you kept him on the pitch. Did you think about substituting him? And he said, I am bald, but I wouldn't, with any hair on my head, have thought about taking him off. Because in these moments, at those times, in these games, he has to suffer. He has to sacrifice himself for the team. He has to go out there and do what he did, which was win us the game.
Yeah, this is what he's all about, setting those standards. And I think every little situation that's come up, he's got right. So when he dropped Rashford against Wolves, brought him on and he got the winner. This situation, you go back to what happened with the Brentford game, when he made them all run, that difference in distance covered between the two teams, but he did the run as well. So yeah. I think that just showed that he's in it with them.
That was a key moment, because Bruno Fernandes, if you speak to him, he will tell you that was the day that they realised that this guy was the real deal.
Yeah, because he then, it's not just, right, I'm going to punish you guys. It's like, right, we're all going to suffer together. And I think the Ronaldo situation fell into his lap. I think that was a massive gift to be honest, because we spoke in the summer about what he could bring. And my only concern was, would the club be willing to give him the authority he needed to corral these players? Because you look at last season, briefings left, right and centre, players unhappy, players acting with impunity. As soon as they realised that he could drop Ronaldo, that he could marginalise Ronaldo, they thought, right, well, if it can happen to him, it can happen to us. And he was able to put that discipline in. And he's got rid of Ronaldo, who was never going to work in his system. So everything has gone well. They've made some good signings. Surprisingly, given the scattergun approach in the summer, he's done brilliantly and the players have really responded.
Yep, they really have. But conversely, Manchester City's players, are they still responding to Pep Guardiola, Crook?
I'm not sure, and I've been hearing whispers for a few weeks now that maybe the atmosphere at their training ground is perhaps not as harmonious as it has been in the past. We know that Pep is a very demanding coach himself, and sometimes, and I think there's a case for this at Liverpool as well with Jurgen Klopp, sometimes players do get bored of hearing the same voice day in, day out. I think it's a problem for Manchester City. I think the increasing reliability on Erling Haaland is a problem as well, because let's be honest, Manchester United did a fantastic job in shutting him out of the game. And because City have changed the way that they play this season to accommodate Haaland, they aren't getting the volume of goals from midfield that maybe they have done in the past. I think there's a lot of issues for Manchester City. And again, that's why I think this is a gilt-edged opportunity for Arsenal, because I don't think it's something that can necessarily be fixed overnight. I mean, you look at the performance against Southampton in midweek when the fringe players came in, they were absolutely smashed, really, by the team statistically, the worst in the Premier League. So it's been a really bad week for Pep Guardiola and for Manchester City.
It's been a bit longer than that, though, hasn't it? Because if you go back to the last couple of weeks of November, they lost to Brentford at home, which was quite a poor performance. They just about got over the line against Fulham in the game prior to that. Then coming back, they've dropped points against Everton, which is not something you would expect them to do at home. They were poor in the first half against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge and then managed to win the game by a few subtle changes in the second half. Rico Lewis played a big part in that game. They lost at Southampton, as you mentioned. Now they've lost to Manchester United. It's not like Pep Guardiola and his team to not find a solution to these sorts of problems. Their next game is live on talkSPORT. It's Manchester City against Tottenham on Thursday night. Then they play Wolves, then Arsenal in the FA Cup before Tottenham again in the Premier League. And then Arsenal, not too long after that, again, away from home in the league. So it's a big couple of weeks for Manchester City, a big couple of weeks for Arsenal. We'll find out a little bit more about both those two teams, I think, over the course of the next month on talkSPORT. You mentioned Southampton, who had already beaten Manchester City this last week. They knocked them out of the Carabao Cup. They also beat Everton on Saturday. But the story probably is a Goodison Park one rather than a St Mary's one, bearing in mind the Everton board were warned beforehand not to attend because of threats to their security. Yerry Mina and Anthony Gordon ended up getting involved with fans. It all looked very unseemly, Kevin.
Yeah, it's a toxic atmosphere, no doubt about that. I think fans have been dismayed for some time about the direction the club has gone in. That said, I think some of the behaviour we have seen in terms of fans confronting players is completely unacceptable. If there are credible threats to the board, that is also wildly unacceptable and so far beyond the way fans should behave. Yes, we want passion. Of course we do. We're all passionate about our football clubs. And, if fans have a right to protest, it's about that line. And if you cross that line, then you should be censured for that. They have misspent money. There's no doubt about that. There's been a real lack of footballing infrastructure there in terms of recruitment. But the amount of stick that somebody like Bill Kenwright gets, and I understand that he's the kind of lightning rod for a lot of this, I wonder if it's a bit misplaced, to be honest. There's a guy who clearly cares passionately about the football club and has done for a long time. And so, yeah, it is all very, very concerning at the moment.
Yeah, I know what you mean, and I completely understand that there is certain lines that you cannot cross. But I wonder whether or not Everton, as a football club, and I'm talking about the hierarchy here, not Frank, not his team, not the players. I wonder whether the club have actually handled this incredibly badly. Not only mismanaging the football club and to the point where they've got literally no money. We had an Everton fan on Saturday on the game day warm-up who was talking about how they needed to bring in this player or that player in the January transfer window. And I was screaming, they've got no money. And even if they had any money, they couldn't spend it because of FFP. So they cannot bring players in, or if they can bring them in, they can bring in one or two on loan on a low wage because they're so close to the line of breaching FFP that it's impossible for them. But the board aren't communicating properly. Moshiri come on talkSPORT the other week, and he gave a lot of platitudes, and he spoke a lot about what he wanted to do and pleading for patience and understanding. But the truth is that by not attending the game on Saturday, they diverted the attention back onto the players. They put more pressure onto the players. Now, I'm not saying that if there is a credible threat to the security of the board that they should have just toughed it out and gone. I don't believe that. But I believe that by getting to this situation, by allowing it to get this toxic, this much angst and toxicity around the football club, by not dealing with it earlier, they've now put themselves in a position where they cannot win. And they've fueled the issues. They've made it more intense than it needed to be because they didn't confront it earlier.
It's a mess. And not only can they not win on the pitch, they can't win off it either, as you say. So I don't see where they go from here, Everton. I do have a little bit of sympathy for Moshiri when you hear him speak, because a lot of owners and boards get criticised for not spending money. You can't level that at Moshiri. He spent money badly, and that's why Everton are in the position that they are. As you say, not much money to spend in January. I have done a piece for the Transfer Notebook on talkSPORT suggesting that Mikel Antonio is a potential target. You can understand why Frank Lampard would be attracted to a player like him, but whether they have the finances to get the deal done is open to debate. But I don't think this toxicity is helping anybody. It was always going to be the case that if Southampton could take the game by the scruff of the neck, if they could get themselves on the front foot, then the pressure would be heaped on the players. There'd be murmurings of discontent from the stands. The reason they stayed up at the end of last season was because the football club were united. You remember the supporters creating a real atmosphere of togetherness.
That was Frank Lampard embracing the Goodison Park crowd. There was still problems even then when they were moaning about the board, but Frank brought them in and said, we've got to do this together. They did it. But now we're in a situation with Everton, where there is no way out of this. And sacking Frank isn't going to help. Changing the board isn't going to help. I honestly do not know what is going down and rebuilding like Burnley the only way out of this situation.
Potentially. And I think you felt at the start of the season they were probably too good to go down. I think that's the only way now. I can't really make a case for Everton staying up. I don't think Frank Lampard deserves a free pass, by the way, because there's still some talented players on that pitch that results tell us he isn't getting the best out of. What this angst towards the board and the owners has done is actually really taking him out the spotlight, but I don't think he's necessarily performing to the best of his capabilities either. And it also gives the players a free pass to a certain extent, because Anthony Gordon, Yerry Mina, two of the players we know were confronted by fans after the game. Well, they'll turn around and say, well, stuff it. The fans don't like us anyway. Who cares if we win or not? So I think that could have a very negative impact. It's all very negative in terms of Everton. And their problem, and you've mentioned the spending, you look at teams like Wolves, who are having a real go this transfer window. Southampton, who beat them, are ambitious and have already signed a couple of players. They want 2 or 3 more. Bournemouth are going to bring in some players. Nottingham Forest, who are climbing away anyway, they're going to bring in some players. So Everton are in danger of being left behind. I think they're going down.
I think there's another concern here, by the way, and these are allegations, but they are allegations that have been around for a while. There was an investigation conducted into what influence Alisher Usmanov has had on the club. And there have been allegations that he was present in some way, shape or form on several occasions when they hired managers. Now, what is his role? And, what is the financial situation? So, as I say, these are allegations. They still need to be proven. But that is concerning because that's just more uncertainty. Moshiri, yes, he spent, but it's been spent in a scattergun way. There's no real structure. The other thing as well is that I've always felt there are delusions of grandeur at that football club. Yes, they were strong in the 80s, but, there's no divine right for Everton to be in the top half of the Premier League. And so I think that has added to that feeling of entitlement and toxicity.
Well, look, the key thing is the club's not run like a modern day football club. Look at Brighton, look at Brentford, look at the way that Liverpool and Manchester City have done their recruitment. We've spoke about that so many times in the past. You run a football club with strategy, with recruitment departments that know what they're doing, and decent coaching. If you don't do those three things, then you are in massive, massive trouble. Certainly, Southampton's still in massive trouble, but they've got a big win on the board by beating Everton by 2-1. Nathan Jones, first league win off the back of 2 huge cup wins as well. James Ward-Prowse with 2 goals in the game. The free kick, what was Jordan Pickford doing?
Yeah, starting position's all wrong, isn't it? I mean, that's not... James Ward-Prowse is a wonderful free kick taker, as we know, but that wasn't by any means the best free kick he's ever taken. But the first goal, I think we have to give James Ward-Prowse a lot of credit for, because that isn't a very James Ward-Prowse goal. You need leaders when you're in times of adversity. I spoke to James on Thursday, and he spoke really well, spoke about the players being lost under Ralph Hasenhuttl, the fact that belief had been sacked out of them. And to be fair, despite the fact he's taken a lot of criticism, including from me, he also spoke really well about Nathan Jones and about how the players love his combative style, the fact he's so spiky in press conferences, because he said maybe Southampton historically have been too nice a football club. You know, people come down to St Mary's, stay in a nice hotel, have a nice day out. Nathan Jones is trying to change that, but ultimately you can only be judged on what happens on the pitch, and James Ward-Prowse has proved himself a real leader on the pitch as well. Slightly different role in that number 10 position. I think he's a wonderful player. He's a wonderful ambassador. And it does actually bring back into question why Gareth Southgate thought it was a good idea at the World Cup to take Conor Gallagher and not give him a single minute and leave James Ward-Prowse at home.
Brighton 3, Liverpool 0. Liverpool look absolutely spent, don't they? They look exhausted. Jamie Carragher saying that they're the worst defensive team in the league right now. They can get bullied. They get pulled out of shape too easily. Konate and Matip was absolutely run ragged by Evan Ferguson, who's done a brilliant job since coming into the team. What did you make of the performance, and how does Jurgen Klopp sort it out? Because he himself said he cannot remember a worse performance in his managerial career. Kev?
Yeah, they were dreadful. And the first thing I want to say is that Brighton were excellent. Ferguson looks amazing, by the way. I've only seen him a few times. Obviously, all of us have only seen him a few times. He looks incredible already. But the same goals time and time again, the same mistakes time and time again. And I think we can talk about systems and coaching all we want, but actually, if you're not physically winning challenges, if you're making basic errors in possession, basic errors out of possession, you're going to lose games over and over again. And so there's a mix of things here. I do think Jurgen Klopp has to find some kind of tactical solution to protect the back line a bit better, although he's not going to compromise on that high line, I don't think he'll ever do that. But the players have to take a lot of responsibility as well, because they're the ones making the errors, they're the ones missing the challenges, and they're the ones who can't pass 5 yards. So I think there's a mix of things here. I don't think it's all on Klopp. I know the temptation is to look at what happened at Dortmund and think, well, it's the same thing. He ran out of steam at Dortmund. He's running out of steam at Liverpool. He's trying to rebuild a team on the fly. Arsenal couldn't do that. They had to take their medicine and be in the Europa League, or not even in Europe at times. Manchester United have had to do that. They've had to be in the Europa League and rebuild. And I think Liverpool are going through that process at the moment.
Yeah. Gakpo, thoughts, Crook?
Non-existent in that game, but he wasn't the only one. I mean, there were problems all over the pitch. The freedom that the 2 Brighton wide players, March and Matoma, were given by, 2 of the best fullbacks in the league in recent years was frightening. Centre-backs were all over the shop. Danny Welbeck taking the mickey, really, with that 3rd goal. Midfield, Brighton dominated in that area. Adam Lallana rolling back the years against his old club. And going forward, Salah didn't have a kick. Gakpo didn't have a kick. Oxlade-Chamberlain looked like he's playing from memory. It looked to me like a team who've come to the end of their cycle. And I wonder if Jurgen Klopp has come to the end of his cycle as well. Does he have the capability? Does he have the energy to rebuild this team in the way that Kev has suggested? I'm not convinced.
It's Nottingham Forest 2, Leicester City 0. So I'm just going to have a quick look at that Premier League table. Let me just see where it is now. Nottingham Forest, 13th, 20 points at the halfway stage. What do we think about that, boys?
Yeah, I'm going to take my hat off to you, Sam, if I had one, because you have been saying that your mate Steve Cooper will get Forest out of trouble, and your prediction is looking very good at the moment. At home, they've become a really difficult team to play against. Obviously, the away form needs some improvement. They go to Bournemouth at the weekend. That will be a great opportunity to pick up a rare win on the road. But yeah, 20 points, 5 points clear of the drop. Brennan Johnson starting to score goals defensively, a lot more resolute. And again, I think this is a triumph for good coaching, because obviously they threw money at it in the summer. That didn't really work. And I think this is just Steve Cooper getting back to basics on the training field and coaching his team to be a lot more solid at the back. And slowly but surely that's allowed them to play with a bit more freedom going forward and a bit more confidence as well. I think they probably will stay up now. I tend to agree with you.
Some key games coming up, Kevin. Leeds at home on the 5th of February, and a little bit further down the line, Everton at home on the 4th of March. Those two big games. If they could get 6 points from that, then they will really establish themselves as a team that are very likely to stay in the division.
Yeah, I think this is all part of the process. I think you look at all the players they signed in the summer and we said, well, this is chaos. How are they going to be able to do it? But what they actually did was started off that process by getting the quality in the door in the first place. So now you've got guys like Morgan Gibbs-White, who was excellent against Leicester. You've got guys like Remo Freuler. You've got recruits that Renan Lodi, Scarpa looks a great signing. So you've got that quality in there. Then it's about allowing the coach to find what the best 14 or 15 are, work out the tactical shape of things, and then take them forward. And as a process, it's worked really well so far. We're only halfway through the season. I think this World Cup affected season has skewed the narrative sometimes, because I think you looked at it and thought, oh, they're in big, big trouble. But there was still so much of the season to go. And they haven't panicked. They gave the coach a new contract, and rightly so. And at home, you have to be good if you're going to stay up. We've seen that time and time again. The home form is critical, and that part of it they've got absolutely right. And Brennan Johnson looks such an exciting player, so much pace. But the way he took his goals to take it round the goalkeeper and score, but the second goal, the finish, is outrageously good. So yeah, they're in a really good place right now.
So Wolves getting better. They beat West Ham by 1-0. And Wolves Liverpool is live on talkSPORT on Tuesday night in FA Cup, a replay. A big game for both these two teams. Quick word on West Ham United and what happens with David Moyes, because it's all gone very sour very quickly. I mean, he's not stupid. He knows he needs to win games if he wants to save his job. But it's been some reversal of fortune, bearing in mind they were semi-finalists of the Europa League just, 10 months ago?
Yeah, I think the board are still reluctant to make the change, but you know the stats don't lie. They lost a lot of games in 2022. That poor form has continued at the start of this year. The fans are very anti-David Moyes now, and it's always difficult to turn that around once that happens. They're not scoring goals. The new signings that they've brought in, Skamaka and Paquetá in particular, aren't playing to the best of their capabilities. Moyes doesn't seem capable of getting a tune out of them. I think if they lose at Everton or against Everton this weekend, I think he's in big trouble. You know, we hear that maybe a list of short-term candidates, likes of Rafa Benitez and Nuno Espirito Santo, neither of whom seem to have inspired the fans, have been drawn up as a contingency plan. I think David Moyes is coming to the end. It was always quite an uneasy relationship anyway, wasn't it? There was a lot of West Ham fans who didn't want him back when he returned to the club. Then obviously he's had a good couple of seasons, but as soon as it started to go wrong, they were always going to turn. And I think unless they make a change, West Ham are sleepwalking into big, big trouble. So are Leicester, by the way. Only, 2 points above the relegation places, not spending the kind of money other clubs are. I worry about them as relegation candidates, and I didn't think I'd be saying that.
I certainly worry about Bournemouth as relegation candidates, beaten again for the 6th straight game in a row away at Brentford, who are quietly having a very, very good season. Aston Villa beat Leeds on Friday night in one of the most jammiest performances ever. I saw them against Wolves and I thought they were average. They weren't particularly good against Stevenage. Obviously, they lost that game at home. But Leeds was slightly unlucky, and Jesse Marsh said it was the best 90-minute performance they'd put together. They've got a huge game against Cardiff, who've just changed their manager over the weekend in midweek. It's difficult really for Jesse Marsh, is it? Because actually I think he seems to have sort of got them playing quite well without putting points on the board.
Yeah, and I think you would imagine that will change over the course of the next few games. They are playing well. They do pose an attacking threat. My only concern about them is that they make every game the same in a way. That kind of chaotic approach, and I know it's part of his coaching. It's exactly what he wants to do. He wants to funnel everything into the middle. He wants to create lots of counter-pressing opportunities. The problem with that is that you can never truly dominate a game. And so it's a very wearing way of playing. What they've done is they've backed him by bringing in guys who have experience of that system. So Tyler Adams has come in, Aronson's come in, Christensen's come in, Verber. So they've got those guys who are used to playing that system. I think they'll be fine in the fullness of time. I think they'll be mid-table. I don't think they'll go down. Nonso I love. I was so impressed with him when he came into the Italy team for the Nations League, and that was when he was back at Zurich, and he helped them win the Swiss Super League against the odds. He's just a pocket rocket. He's so exciting, always wants to affect the game, always wants to run at people. I think he looks great, and I think Jorginho Rutel is a very similar type of player in terms of that kind of up and atom dynamic style.
He's the record signing now, £35 million from Hoffenheim, Jorginho Rutter. We'll see more from him over the course of this week, and we may well see Neil Warnock in the dugout on Wednesday night. He is the favourite to become the next Cardiff manager, at least until the end of the season. He retired in April. Honestly, he retired last April. But he might be coming back again, you never know. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your contribution. We appreciate it. We'll be back later in the week when we look forward to another raft of Premier League games. It's a busy old time.